I remember the first time she said it, that line that has refused to leave me since. Age is just a number, she murmured close enough that I could feel the words move against my skin. And for a second, I forgot how to breathe. It started on an ordinary evening, the kind where the air feels too still, like the world is holding its breath. I was waiting at the small cafe by the corner of Maple Street, the one that smelled faintly of roasted almonds and rain-soaked pavement. I had my notebook open, half pretending to write. Then she walked in. Not rushed, not searching, just present. Like she knew exactly where she belonged. Her hair was tied loosely, strands falling where they wanted. Her blouse, soft gray, clung to her in a way that didn't try to impress. But there was something in the way she carried herself, the quiet assurance of someone who had already lived through the things I was still learning to name. She glanced at me once, then again, the second time slower. That pause changed everything. We'd met before, though only in passing. She was a consultant at the firm where I'd recently started interning. I'd admired her from the distance professionalism demands, the way she listened more than she spoke, how she seemed to see through the noise in a room. But here, outside fluorescent lights and boardroom formality, she seemed different. Softer, maybe? Or maybe it was me, seeing her without the armor. When she caught me looking, she smiled, not coy, not dismissive, a small, knowing curve of her lips that seemed to say, "You're not hiding it as well as you think." And she was right. "Mind if I sit?" she asked. Her voice had that low, even warmth that made every syllable sound deliberate. I nodded before I could think. We talked, about nothing and everything. The city, the weather, the bitter coffee. But beneath every word was something else, something that hummed quietly between us. I noticed the way her fingers circled the rim of her cup, slow, thoughtful. The way she leaned forward when I spoke, like she was giving me her full attention, and I didn't know what to do with that kind of focus. At one point, her hand brushed mine. It wasn't planned. But it was enough. The contact was brief, but the world seemed to sharpen, the sound of spoons clinking, the faint hum of jazz from the speakers, the pulse in my wrist that suddenly felt too loud. She didn't pull away immediately. Neither did I. "You're quiet," she said softly, breaking the silence. "I'm trying not to say something stupid," I admitted, half smiling. Her eyes lingered on me, curious. "That's rare," she said. "Most people don't try." Something about the way she said it, the subtle amusement, the tenderness hidden in it, made me want to close the distance between us, if only to see what her expression looked like up close. But I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, she reached across the table, her fingertips resting lightly over the pulse at my wrist. "You know," she said, her voice almost a whisper now, "when you stop overthinking, your heart speeds up. Like it wants to speak before you do." I looked at her hand on mine, graceful, deliberate, and then at her face. There was no teasing in her eyes this time. Just quiet recognition. That's when she said it, the words that have lived in my mind ever since. "Age is just a number," she whispered, her thumb tracing a slow circle against my skin. And then she smiled faintly, adding, "But your heartbeat? That's real." Before I could answer, before I could even inhale, the cafe door swung open. A rush of cold air broke the spell. Someone called her name. She looked back toward the voice, then at me, her hand still resting on mine, and in that suspended second, I knew, whatever this was, it wasn't over. Not yet. The next time I saw her, it wasn't planned. Or maybe part of me had been hoping for it all along. It was late, the office nearly empty, the kind of hour when silence settles over everything and even the lights feel tired. I was packing up, when I noticed her standing by the window in the break room, framed by the city's amber glow. One hand around a mug, the other absently tracing circles on the glass. She didn't turn when I walked in. "You're still here," I said. "So are you," she replied softly. Then, after a pause, "Deadlines, right?" It was an excuse, and we both knew it. She told me once that she hated going home late. "Too quiet," she said. The kind of quiet that makes you remember things. I didn't ask what kind of things. I didn't need to. There was a faint sadness in her tone, the kind that doesn't ask for sympathy, just space. Still, the image stayed with me. Her sitting alone in a dim kitchen, the hum of the fridge louder than it should be, a glass of wine half finished beside unread emails. I think that's when I started noticing her more. The tired smile that didn't reach her eyes, the small sighs between her words, the way she sometimes rubbed her wrist as if loosening an old ache. Maybe that's how attraction begins, not with beauty, but with recognition. That night, we ended up talking again. About work, about nothing, about everything. She leaned on the counter beside me, close enough that I could smell her perfume, faint jasmine with something warmer beneath. When she laughed, it wasn't the polished kind she gave in meetings. It was unguarded, real. And I wanted to hear it again. At one point, she brushed a strand of hair from her face, and her hand grazed my shoulder. It wasn't deliberate, maybe, but I felt it long after she moved away. Her eyes met mine. People would talk, she said suddenly. I know, I replied. The air between us tightened. There it was, the unspoken rule either of us had dared to name. She was senior, I was new. She was established, I was still figuring out who I was. And above all, she was her age, and I was mine. But that didn't stop the way I looked at her, or the way she didn't look away. She set her mug down, her hand brushing against mine again, this time slower, deliberate. Sometimes, she said quietly, you meet someone at the wrong time. I swallowed, unsure if she meant me. Then she stepped closer, her voice just above a whisper. And sometimes, she added, you stay anyway. For a heartbeat we didn't move. The hum of the city, the ticking clock, the faint warmth of her body near mine, everything blurred into one steady rhythm. Her fingers lingered on my sleeve before she finally turned to leave. And as she walked away, she said without looking back, lock up when you're done. Her tone was calm, professional, distant, but the tremor in her voice said something else entirely. That night, I didn't lock up for a long time. 4 days after that night, I tried to keep things normal. Professional. Predictable. But normal didn't feel possible anymore. Not after the way she'd said sometimes you stay anyway. Every glance now carried something unsaid. Every silence felt too long. It was Thursday when it happened, the day everything came too close to breaking. We were reviewing reports in her office, late again. The rest of the floor was empty, shadows stretching long across the carpet. Rain tapped against the windows, soft but steady, like it was keeping time for us. She was standing beside me, leaning over the desk, her perfume faint but constant. I could feel the warmth of her shoulder through my sleeve. My focus kept slipping, not to the papers, but to the curve of her wrist, the small movement of her lips as she read. You're distracted, she said without looking up. I forced a smile. You noticed. Her mouth curved slightly. Hard not to. A beat of silence. The air between us seemed to pulse. Then came the interruption, a knock on the door. We both straightened instantly, as if burned. It was Mira from accounting, chatty, oblivious. She peeked in. Still here, you two? Overachievers much? Her tone was teasing, innocent, but I saw the flicker in the woman's eyes. That quick calculation, what did it look like from the outside? 2 people alone, lights dim, the air too warm. Just wrapping up, she said evenly. Her voice was steady, but her fingers tightened on the edge of the desk. Mira laughed. All right, don't stay too late. And she was gone as quickly as she'd appeared. The door closed, and the silence that followed was deafening. She exhaled slowly, her shoulders dropping. That, she said, is exactly why this can't. But the rest of the sentence never came. Because when she turned toward me, we were already too close. Close enough that I could see the faint shimmer in her eyes, the soft line of worry on her brow. Close enough to feel her breath, unsteady, matching mine. She froze, as if realizing it at the same moment I did. Neither of us moved. The rain outside grew heavier, a low rhythm against the glass. "Do you ever think," I whispered, not sure why I said it, "that some things find us whether we want them to or not?" She looked at me then, really looked, and for the first time, she didn't hide the pull between us. Her lips parted slightly, like she was about to speak, or something else. Then her phone buzzed on the desk. A message. The screen lit her face in pale light, a name I didn't recognize. Her expression shifted. A small, practiced calmness, the kind that comes from years of learning to hold yourself together. "I should go," she said quietly. But when she turned to leave, she stopped, her hand brushing against mine in passing. Not an accident. Not this time. She looked up, eyes soft but certain. "You shouldn't make this harder than it already is." I wanted to agree. To step back. But I didn't. And for one breathless second, either did she. The distance between us vanished, almost. Her breath brushed my cheek. Her hand lingered on my arm. We didn't kiss. But the space between us, whatever it was, had already changed forever. When she finally walked away, she didn't look back. But her reflection in the glass did, just long enough to let me know she wanted to. It had been a week of pretending. Pretending not to notice her glances during meetings, not to search for her reflection in the glass walls, not to linger in doorways hoping she might be there too. But tonight, the pretending broke. We were both working late again, unplanned, like always, though I was starting to believe nothing between us really was unplanned anymore. The rain had returned, soft against the windows. Her office lights glowed dimly, and she looked up when I appeared at the door. "You shouldn't still be here," she said. "Neither should you," I answered. She didn't argue. Just stared at me for a moment, too long, too quietly, before turning back to her screen. There was something different about her that night. Restless. Tense. The calm she always carried seemed to have slipped away. When I asked if she was all right, she said, "You shouldn't ask questions you don't want answers to." The words hung between us, sharp, trembling. I stepped closer. "Try me." Her breath caught, barely audible. "You don't understand what this could do," she whispered. "Then explain it." She turned to face me, really face me, and suddenly we were inches apart. Her eyes, usually steady, looked uncertain. But her voice didn't waver. "I'm not supposed to feel this way," she said. "Not about you." I wanted to speak, to tell her she wasn't alone in it, but words felt too small for what filled the room. Instead, I reached up, hesitating, then brushed a loose strand of hair behind her ear. My fingertips grazed her skin, and that single touch made the world tilt. She closed her eyes, just for a second. "Don't," she whispered, though her voice said the opposite. "Tell me to stop," I said quietly. She opened her eyes then, a flicker of fear, want, surrender, and whispered, "I can't." The silence that followed felt alive. I could hear her breathing, slow, uneven, the same rhythm as mine. When she leaned back against the desk, I followed without thinking. The faint scent of rain and jasmine clung to her hair. My hand rested near her waist, not touching, but close enough to feel the warmth radiating between us. Her voice came out soft, almost pleading. "You make me forget who's watching." "No one's watching now," I said. She looked up at me, her face tilted slightly, lips parted, and the distance between us vanished until only hesitation remained. "Say something," she whispered. "I think about you," I said. "More than I should." Her breath hitched. "You shouldn't have said that." "Why?" "Because now," she murmured, her voice trembling, "I can't pretend I didn't hear it." I took one step closer. The air thickened, heartbeat against heartbeat. Her hand lifted, brushing my collar, pausing there. "If we do this..." She didn't finish. Neither did I. Our faces were inches apart, close enough that I could feel the tremor in her breath, the warmth of it against my mouth, when suddenly, a noise broke the moment. A sharp knock at the door. We froze. The handle turned. And everything we hadn't said rushed into the silence between us, waiting to be answered, The door swung open before either of us could move. Her assistant, Anna, stood there, eyes flicking between us, the air still thick with what almost happened. "Sorry," Anna said quickly, holding up a folder. "Didn't mean to interrupt." Her voice was casual, but her gaze lingered, curious, sharp. Too perceptive. She placed the file on the desk, gave a polite smile, and left. The door closed again, but it might as well have slammed. For a moment, neither of us breathed. "She suspects," I said quietly. "She knows," she corrected, voice low, unsteady. "People always do. Before you admit it yourself." The silence that followed wasn't the same as before. It was heavier, full of consequence. She moved away from the desk, putting distance between us, her hand brushing through her hair like she could shake off what just happened. "This was a mistake," she said under her breath. "All of it." I wanted to say no, to close the distance again, but she kept talking. "I've been lying to myself," she continued, voice breaking slightly. "Telling myself it's just attention, a distraction. But it's not. And that's the problem." I felt the words before I understood them, sharp, honest, terrifying. "It's not just attention," I said quietly. She turned to face me. "Then what is it?" The question hung in the air, too dangerous to answer. I stepped forward anyway. "It's what happens when someone finally sees you. Not your title, not your control, you." Her breath trembled. "You shouldn't say things like that." "Why not?" "Because I want to believe you." That admission landed between us like thunder, quiet, devastating. She looked away, as if the truth itself had burned too hot. I watched her shoulders tense, her hands tightening around the edge of the desk. "Does anyone else know?" I asked. Her silence told me more than words could. After a long pause, she whispered, "Someone saw us. The night in the break room. Mira." She mentioned it, casually, but I could tell. The realization hit like a pulse, fear mixing with something darker, deeper. "Does that change how you feel?" I asked. She laughed softly, the kind that hides panic. "It should. But it doesn't." She looked at me again, and there it was, the truth in her eyes she didn't want to say aloud. The pull either of us could unlearn. I stepped closer. She didn't move back. For once, she didn't hide the way her hands trembled. "You scare me," she whispered. "Why?" "Because you make me want something I shouldn't." Her voice cracked on the last word, and I reached for her, not to hold, but to stop her from breaking apart. My fingers brushed her wrist. She flinched, not from fear, but from recognition. Her heartbeat thudded beneath my touch. Then she said it, the line that shattered what little distance we had left. "If this doesn't end now," she breathed, "it won't end at all." She stepped past me toward the door, but not before her shoulder brushed mine, slow enough to feel deliberate. And in that tiny movement, that quiet collision, a decision was made. Not to stop. Just to wait for the moment they both knew was coming. It happened on a Friday night, the kind that felt borrowed, too quiet for the choices waiting inside it. The office was empty again, lights dimmed, rain streaking the windows like the sky couldn't decide whether to stop or pour. She was there, sitting at her desk, coat draped over the chair, eyes unfocused. I didn't plan to go in, but I did. Maybe part of me knew it was the last time we'd stand in the same silence pretending not to feel it. She looked up when I entered. No surprise, no greeting. Just a long, tired exhale. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "Then tell me to leave," I replied. She didn't. I moved closer, slow, careful. The distance between us had become a language of its own, one we both knew how to read. Her hands were on the desk, folded neatly, but her knuckles were white. "Everyone's talking," she said finally. "About you. About me. Let them." She gave a faint laugh, the kind that trembles before it breaks. "You think it's that easy?" "No," I said, stepping closer. "But I think some things are worth the risk." That stopped her. She looked up, eyes sharp and wet all at once. "You don't understand what I could lose," I took another step, close enough now that I could see the tiny scar near her lip, the tremor in her breath. I'm not asking you to lose anything, I said. I'm asking you to stop pretending you don't feel this. For a moment, she said nothing. Just stood there, still but burning. Then she whispered, You have no idea how long I've tried not to. The confession landed between us, raw and shaking. She turned away, bracing her hands against the edge of the desk. I reached out, hesitant, my fingers brushing her arm. She didn't pull away this time. Her voice came out low, barely there. If I let this happen, there's no undoing it. I know. Her breath hitched. And you'd still choose it? I stepped closer until her back met my chest, until there was no space left that didn't hum with want. Every time. She turned then, slow, deliberate, and suddenly we were face to face, eyes locked in that fragile place between restraint and surrender. Her hand came up, trembling, resting against my collar. My pulse hammered beneath it. This is madness, she whispered. Maybe, I said. But it's honest. The world outside disappeared, the rain, the lights, the noise, until only the sound of our breathing filled the room. She leaned forward, just slightly, enough that her lips hovered a breath from mine. And then she stopped. Her eyes searched mine, steady now, full of clarity and ache. If we cross this line, I can't be who I was before. I nodded. Neither can I. A pause. A heartbeat. And in that fragile stillness she made her choice, not with words, but with the slow, deliberate press of her forehead against mine. No kiss. No escape. Just truth. When she finally stepped back, her voice was soft, resolved. Now you know. And for the first time, I did, that love isn't always about possession. Sometimes it's about the moment you almost surrender, and what you become when you don't. The following week felt strange, quieter, softer somehow. The air between us had changed, not heavy anymore, just known. We didn't avoid each other, but we didn't chase the moments either. It was as if that night had burned something clean inside both of us. The wanting was still there, but the fear had finally settled into understanding. She found me one afternoon by the window near the elevators, coffee in her hand, sunlight on her face. For the first time in days, she looked rested. Leaving early? She asked. Trying to, I said, smiling. You? She shrugged lightly. Still learning how. The small talk carried no weight now, and maybe that was the beauty of it. The ordinary coming back after everything extraordinary we'd almost become. I keep thinking about that night, I admitted quietly. She looked at me then, not startled, just open. So do I, she said. But not with regret. Her tone was calm, gentle. Like someone who had finally forgiven herself for something unspoken. I used to think this was wrong, she added after a pause. The difference between us, the timing, what people would think. And now? I asked. Now I think we just met when we were supposed to, even if it looks wrong to everyone else. The honesty in her voice undid me a little. I stepped closer, enough that our reflections blurred into one in the glass. She hesitated, then reached out and took my hand. Not hidden this time, not rushed. Just two people, fingers intertwined, breathing the same air without apology. Her thumb traced slow circles over my skin, a quiet rhythm I'd come to know as hers. You make me feel, she said softly, like time isn't chasing me anymore. I smiled. Maybe that's what you've done for me too. We stood there like that, in the easy stillness of late afternoon light, not pretending, not promising, just being. When she finally leaned in, it wasn't a kiss, not quite. She pressed her forehead to mine, the same way she had that night, and whispered, You grew on me when I wasn't looking. I laughed under my breath. You say that like it's a bad thing. She pulled back, eyes warm. It's the best kind of thing. The quiet kind. Later, when we walked out together, she slipped her arm through mine as if it had always belonged there. The city buzzed around us, horns, footsteps, the faint smell of rain still lingering, and for once, none of it felt like noise. It felt like beginning. Not the loud, dramatic kind, but the small, steady one you almost miss because it feels too real to be noticed. And as we reached the corner, she looked at me and smiled, that same quiet, knowing smile from the first day. Age is just a number, she said again, her voice soft but sure. But what I feel when I'm with you, that's something time can't touch. I squeezed her hand. Then let's not count the years. Let's just count this, she said, pressing her palm to my chest, where my heartbeat quickened beneath her touch.